to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 256, The Blood-Stained Kite in the Night Sky. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Dense fog, a desolate, barren land. A thatched hut, a flickering lamp, its faint glow casting an eerie light. The scene before them was utterly bizarre. Qinming stared at the dim, human-shaped lantern, his heart trembling. It resembled Old Lu so closely. How could this be? One was a small village in a remote corner of the world, while the other was Kunling, a place intertwined with myths and legends. The two should have no connection whatsoever. Qinming dismissed it as a coincidence, a case of mistaken identity. How could Old Lu, a simple country elder, have left any trace here? Wu Yaozu stepped forward, but suddenly the lamp flickered as if about to go out, the hut blurring into indistinctness. An illusion. He froze in place. Qinming was astonished. How could everything have been so real just moments ago, and now it was fading away? He took 2 steps forward, and abruptly the dilapidated hut reappeared, the lamp reignited, and everything became clear again. The two men exchanged bewildered glances. Was this place both real and illusory? Xiaowu tried again, but the scene instantly dimmed once more. Qinming sensed something. The moment he stepped forward, everything became vividly clear. What kind of crap place is this? Even playing favorites, discriminating against me. Xiaowu grumbled in frustration. Brother Ming, you go ahead, Xiaowu said, instinctively following behind. As they walked, even when their hands brushed against the thatched hut or touched the dimly lit lanterns, the scenery remained unchanged. Xiaowu's eyes widened. Brother Ming, you said I'm a Jedi child of the desolate land. Don't tell me you are my neighbor, some kind of demon child of the demon land. He found it too bizarre that the scenery here actually recognized people. Qinming remained silent, carefully observing everything around them. The thatched hut was old but far from dilapidated. Given its materials, it seemed to have been built relatively recently, having yet to endure prolonged weathering and erosion. This is a demon land, with thick fog and demonic essence that's harmful to the body. Who would have lived here in seclusion? Qinming thought that this place was completely unsuitable for long-term habitation. Inside the hut, an old desk stood with paper, ink, and brushes. They were not dusty, as if the owner had only left recently. Qinming immediately stepped forward to examine them closely. He didn't recognize the scripture on the paper. It resembled Phoenix Seal scripture, an extremely complex and ancient writing system. However, residual spiritual imprints permeated the paper, directly conveying its meaning to anyone who read it. Returning to the mortal world, I know not when. Yet I've heard that the martial dynasty has already reached its twilight years. Qinming fell into a daze. Martial dynasty at its end. That would be over 500 years ago. If that was the case, the hut had stood for a considerable time. Despite being made of perishable materials, it had yet to decay. Brother Ming, the bloodstain behind the lantern, is it really just paper? Xiaowu reached out to touch it, only to discover that while the paper was as thin as a cicada's wing, it felt surprisingly smooth, almost like leather. He recoiled as if struck by lightning, snatching his hand back. Great-grandmother above, grant us infinite blessings. Wu Yaozu muttered, his lips moving in a prayer. Qinming approached the doorway and examined the human-shaped lantern closely. It depicted a man younger than Old Lu, his hair jet black, his face ruddy, lacking the old man's weathered look. The bloodstain was on the figure's back, where a crack like a cicada's shell ran through the paper, marred by dark, blackened bloodstains. After examining the lantern, Qinming re-entered the hut to study the Phoenix Seal scripture on the coarse paper. Outside the Jade Capital, I beheld the being of the sevenfold convergence realm wandering about. My heart was filled with profound astonishment. Reading this, Qinming felt a profound shock. At present, the path of awakening has reached its end. The Tathagata force, Jade Pure Force, and other similar forces have plateaued, making further progress impossible. Meanwhile, the expansion of the beyond the mortal realm continues. Theoretically, it has already reached the initial stages of the sevenfold convergence realm, but this remains difficult to achieve in practice, with only a few ancient monsters seemingly having taken a single step into this realm. And to think, 500 years ago, there were already individuals capable of the sevenfold convergence realm. Qinming's heart churned with unease, and he quickly scrolled down. When the sevenfold convergence realm has reached perfection. The radiant light dispels the sea of night mist, bringing us close to the magnificent spectacle of the 8 suns traversing the sky, eightfold convergence realm. The person who left this message sounded exclaiming in astonishment. Qinming and Xiaowu exchanged glances, both deeply shaken. After all, the seven imperial force has yet to manifest in the current era, and the sevenfold convergence realm is still in the experimental and exploratory phase, with no complete form established. In fact, it should have been the same in ancient times. Those possessing the six imperial force, and even those at the sixfold convergence realm, could already transform divine spirit god-like creatures or near immortals. This transformation is a violent metamorphosis, a radical change. In essence, such a path would be equivalent to choosing a completely different way of existence. To evolve from human to god, or from human to immortal, this is practically a species-level transformation. Some were willing to tread this path, but many founding ancestors fiercely resisted, refusing to venture into it, believing their original path was incomplete and they shouldn't leap beyond their own lineage. How much greater are today's cultivators than the ancients? If one who achieves sevenfold convergence realm perfection were to become a god, to what transcendent realm would they ultimate ascend? The author of the text seemed deeply moved by the thought. Qin Ming turned the page, revealing Phoenix seal scripture, as if the original owner had jotted it down casually. This. Even Xiao Wu was startled, as the realm mentioned by the writer was beyond their current comprehension. The text briefly discussed the vast disparities among divine-like creatures, even within the same category. For instance, the night-roaming god was dismissively referred to as a lesser god by the local owner. The handwriting was bold and flamboyant, yet the content was somewhat disorganized. He also mentioned earth gods and, even more strikingly, heavenly gods, whose achievements were described as awe-inspiring and terrifying. According to the text, those who attained great heights must have first walked their original path to its furthest reaches. At the same time, he drew a clear analogy, pointing out that the immortal path also had lesser immortals, beings whose strength remained weak. Naturally, the text also mentioned earth immortals and higher-tier cultivators, such as the heavenly immortals who resided in grotto heavens. I gaze upon the future generations, they approach the immortal state but fail to achieve it, ultimately seeking true self. Their path is correct, and their courage surpasses that of the ancient sages. The master of this abode was both astonished and gratified by the changes he witnessed in later times. In his view, the further one advanced on this path, the greater their eventual transformation into a god or immortal would be. He was particularly moved to see that some in later generations had reached the height of the eightfold convergence realm. Among gods and immortals, only those who achieve true greatness can continue to forge new paths. The lesser gods and lesser immortals, however, are plagued by various obstacles. They remain stagnant throughout their entire existence, never taking another step forward. The writing grew increasingly hasty towards the end of the notes, betraying the master's agitated state. Though I now have a path to follow, I constantly recall my origins and long to reclaim my original form. The Phoenix seal scripture here conveyed the master's turbulent emotions. Qin Ming, after only a brief moment of resonance, nearly collapsed to the ground from the sheer impact. He refrained from delving deeper. Without additional context, he could only interpret the words literally, their emotional intensity amplified. By this point, both men understood the master's extraordinary status. This must be an old god or ancient immortal. Wu Yaozu exclaimed excitedly. The notebook wasn't finished. It went on to describe how the local master had carefully observed that the sevenfold convergence realm cultivator hailed from the depths of the night mist world, not this region. This extraordinary outsider had been accidentally stranded here with several disciples by a terrifying divine magnetic storm and was actively seeking a way back. From this perspective, the night mist world truly was boundless. Even gods and immortals likely hadn't explored its entirety. This made sense. After all, many ancestor-level figures of the current era no longer valued immortality, believing they had already reached comparable heights and possessed their own confidence. If even the founding ancestors couldn't reach the end, then old gods and ancient immortals, though superior, wouldn't be astronomically beyond them. Xiao Wu pondered, could there be nations in the depths of the night mist world vaster than ours, with more magnificent cultivation systems? Qin Ming remained silent, turning the page and continuing to read. Time and again, I am moved to sigh. Even for a heavenly god or heavenly immortal, existence is like a kite with a broken string, easily lost in the vast sea of night mist, destined for a blood-stained fall. For all beings, a finite lifespan awaits. This passage left Qin Ming momentarily stunned. Upon deeper reflection, it was truly terrifying, and the more he pondered it, the more his heart raced. I desire to find the path of origin and reclaim my original form. This burning longing permeated the paper, its intensity undiminished even after 5 centuries. Xiao Wu, puzzled, asked, old gods and ancient immortals, it's understandable their paths have changed. But has the evolution of species altered their bodies so drastically? What do gods and immortals truly look like? The horror of flaying, the agony of bone stripping, even gods and immortals could not endure it. Pain, pain. These words were stained with blood. The original owner of this place had been utterly resolute, willing to inflict such cruelty upon himself in his desperate desire to regain human form. Brother Ming, do you think the humanoid paper lanterns outside are made from his skin? Xiao Wu asked. Qinming didn't respond, his gaze fixed on the hastily scrawled characters behind the bloodstains. Drenched in blood, I'll ride the wind back to meet my original self. The words were almost entirely obscured by blood, barely visible. All this combined sent a chill down Qinming's spine, for it bore a striking resemblance to the kite theory of the Hidden World family's Li clan. This man had long since departed. Even if he had once been a heavenly god, wouldn't he ultimately fall like a blood-drenched kite, crashing down somewhere on the earth? Qinming looked again at the humanoid lanterns. Was it a mere coincidence, or was there some connection to this long-lost figure? Upon careful consideration, many details didn't add up. This was a matter from 500 years ago. Moreover, this person was undoubtedly a formidable god or an ancient immortal. Old Lu, now in his 70s, couldn't possibly be this person, as his birth date didn't match. His life had been filled with hardship. As a child, he wandered through icy wastelands, never knowing his parents and nearly freezing to death. After a severe illness that caused amnesia, he drifted to Twin Tree Village and was taken in by a family. Throughout his life, misfortune continued to plague him, and he missed several opportunities to alter his fate. By the end of his days, he had only experienced 3 awakenings. Moreover, his final awakening had even been thanks to Qinming's intervention. I regret it. For a god or an immortal to return to human form is too difficult, especially for a high-level god. This is a death tribulation. I've recorded this experience here, and only those who have cultivated good karma with me may enter this place. When Xiao Wu read this, his eyes widened. He leaned closer, scrutinizing Qinming, and then compared him to the humanoid lantern. Brother Ming, could this be your past life? What on earth are you thinking? Qinming shoved him away. The notebook also mentioned leaving some items behind the hut for future travelers, warning them to take them with caution. Between the lines, the paper seemed to be reminding them that the area behind the hut was anomalous, connected to the legendary lands. The human path is not yet ended, one must press forward with determination, not hastily seek to become a divine being, not even for a heavenly immortal. Escaping from the Jade Capital was no easy feat. These were the final, somewhat fragmented words. The owner of the place abruptly put down his brush, bringing the writing to an end. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 257, Like a Young Heavenly God. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Escaping from the Jade Capital was no easy feat. Qinming stood silently for a long time, the weight of that phrase leaving him lost in thought. Was he a high god, or perhaps an earth immortal? Could he even have been a heavenly immortal? Xiao Wu was also stunned. Both men were unsettled. The papers on the old wooden table were filled with scattered notes, yet they contained astonishing information. An old god or ancient immortal, despite his immense power, was like a kite with a broken string in the vast night sky. He had risked his life to return, seeking his origins and the restoration of his original form. Qinming strongly suspected that the owner of the thatched hut was connected to the beings described in the Kunling divine records. This meant that the legends had escaped into reality. Woo. The wind howled through the night sky, sounding like someone weeping. Qinming and Xiao Wu stood behind the thatched hut, feeling as if they had stepped into another world. Before, thick fog had shrouded the demon land in deathly silence. Now, a black, swirling vortex raged before them, whipping up dust and sand that stung their faces. Just one room apart, the contrast was stark. The cracked earth ahead, littered with bare rock, bore witness to the region's desolation. Not a blade of grass grew here. Amidst the howling wind, shadowy figures with human-like faces seemed to follow the swirling storm, their black hair drifting through the yellow sand like countless black strands. This was no illusion, but a real scene. A black gust of wind slammed into them, and both Qinming and Xiao Wu tensed. At that moment, black hairs slashed through the air, piercing their skin like needles. Protective heavenly light and rainbow light erupted around them, clanging like metal and sparking wildly. Xiao Wu's fur stood on end. What kind of hellscape is this? Black hair whirlwinds, like a fierce ghost is passing through. Any ordinary person caught in such a wind would have their body pierced through, with no chance of survival. What did the original owner leave behind? Qinming searched behind the thatched hut but found nothing. The two expanded their search, venturing deeper into the sand-swept wasteland. Their primary target was the massive black silhouette looming before them, the only mountain visible in this barren land. Are there fierce ghosts in the wind? Xiao Wu's fur bristled. Black hair drifted in the wind, and ghost shadows seemed to flicker in the air, creating an eerie atmosphere. What truly unsettled him was the wind's mournful wail, which sounded like the wailing of ghosts. Despite the obstacles, they successfully reached the summit. The mountain was a towering, lifeless mass, its surface cracked and fissured. Rocks, whipped by the wind, occasionally rolled down the slopes with a rumbling sound. At the summit, they indeed found something. A wooden palisade, miraculously preserved despite the sandstorm, stood intact. It resembled a small mountain stronghold. Qinming and Xiao Wu pushed open the gate and stepped inside. Instantly, the wind died down, and the dust settled. A single barrier separated two completely different worlds. Inside stood a crystal man, its body flawless and translucent, its height comparable to a normal person. A ball of light pulsed in its abdomen. As the two approached, it ignited instantly, blazing and spreading through the crystal man's limbs and torso. The entire figure lit up, its nodes connected by dense silver threads of light, as if it had come to life. The glowing orb seemed to be its spiritual domain. Its eyes lit up, and a spiritual imprint surged forth, a message left by the master of the thatched hut for future visitors. Soon, Qinming and Xiao Wu understood the situation. The owner of the thatched hut had left behind some treasures, but they were too valuable for ordinary people to obtain without passing a test. In short, one had to subdue the crystal men on the mountain to claim the rewards. Otherwise, being too weak, one wouldn't be able to use the treasures even if acquired, making the effort a complete waste. Furthermore, the spiritual imprint revealed that there were 4 similar peaks in total. In the past, the sevenfold convergence perfection realm cultivator who had lingered outside the Jade capital had brought 4 disciples with him. The owner of the thatched hut had interacted with them and, based on their realms and strengths, had visualized their spiritual domain, manifesting, on the crystal men. Clearly, the hut owner intended for future challengers to gauge the level of the renowned disciples from the depths of the night mist world. There was no doubt that, given their master was a sevenfold convergence perfection realm cultivator, these 4 disciples must have been outstanding among their peers. The hut owner vaguely mentioned that the 4 were relatively young for their respective realms but didn't reveal specific ages, presumably to avoid discouraging later challengers. Wu Yaozu scoffed. He says he won't reveal specifics, but isn't this just a deliberate way to provoke future generations? Qinming suspected that the hut owner's primary goal wasn't to bestow opportunities, but rather to arrange sparring matches to stimulate and temper future challengers. After some thought, Xiao Wu said, "It seems those 4 disciples were truly extraordinary." Perhaps the owner of the thatched hut wanted to show later challengers just how terrifying the creatures in the depths of the night mist world are, and how unfathomably deep the waters run. They also knew from the crystal man that different cultivation realms would be guided to different peaks. This must be the youngest disciple of a sevenfold convergence perfection realm cultivator, right? I wonder if this person is in the early, mid, or late stage of the second realm. Qinming stepped forward, deciding to challenge the crystal man. He wanted to get a preliminary assessment of just how formidable the elites of the second realm from that mysterious, distant land truly were. Brother Ming, let me try first, Xiao Wu said, worried. What if this person is at the perfected stage of the second realm? That could be disastrous. It's fine. At worst, I'll be defeated, Qinming replied, shaking his head. He was determined to face the challenge himself. He believed the owner of the thatched hut would have considered this and wouldn't harm those who had earned his goodwill. The moment the challenger approached, the crystal man assumed a combat stance. With a crisp clang, the 5-colored sword materialized in Qinming's right hand. Unlike before, when it had drifted like mist, it now appeared solid and tangible. The consciousness spiritual light in the crystal man's eye sockets flared, and runes across his body erupted with sword energy. In an instant, he blazed like a sun, emitting sword light and dense runes from head to toe in an all-encompassing, no-holds-barred attack. This was no longer a sword wheel, but a sword sphere. Even Xiao Wu was startled. The crystal man had unleashed his trump card right from the start. This was likely the combat style of the deep night mist world, no probing, just a relentless drive to obliterate the opponent in the shortest possible time. At the mountain peak, dazzling light radiated in all directions as the crystal man unleashed hundreds, even thousands, of sword beams. Around Qinming, a 5-colored light mist materialized, forming rapidly spinning light wheels in every direction that blocked the dense sword light and swiftly shredded it. Simultaneously, he thrust his sword forward in a vertical cleave toward the crystal man. During this motion, the 5-colored sword and its light wheels grew even more radiant, piercing the pitch-black night sky. The 5 elements divine techniques resonated, its true meaning transforming into a 5-colored divine radiance. The sword in his hand blazed with such intensity that each strike seemed capable of shattering the boundaries between life and death. With a clang, the crystal man's runes erupted in a blinding display as he met the 5-colored sword head-on, locked in a life and death struggle. This crystal guy is so strong. Xiao Wu's expression turned grave. Few second realm opponents could force Brother Ming to engage in such a serious battle. The moment Qinming's right hand swung the sword, his left palm struck forward, unleashing the Li fire shuttle, a technique derived from the Lihuo scripture, which materialized as a shuttle of blazing fire, hurtling forward with boundless heat. With a thunderous roar, sword light erupted like a forest ahead, shattered by the blinding Li fire shuttle. It tore through the dense curtain of sword light as if plowing through the earth. Qinming then slashed his sword at the crystal man, clashing with the talisman sword blooming in the opponent's hand. The collision was deafening, like a massive lightning strike cascading down the mountaintop. Retracting the five-colored sword, Qinming began unleashing his ultimate technique, abandoning ordinary techniques. His right fist erupted with power as he hurled it forward, manifesting the ultimate killing move of the Wuji scripture, the Wuji seal. The seal materialized, coalescing with the bursting fist light into a massive, earth-yellow seal that crashed downward with a thunderous boom. The crystal man's pure yang consciousness spiritual light surged outward, transforming into a cloud of shimmering, mist-like radiance that instantly took root on the Wuji seal as a pure yang spiritual tree. Qinming stood inches away, his body radiating golden radiance that distorted the space around him, the golden silkworm force domain, perfectly suited for close-quarters combat and the essence of an extraordinary technique. Amidst clanging sounds, golden threads intertwined, blurring the space. The inexplicable force domain caused the branches of the pure yang spiritual tree to snap and its leaves to scatter as it began to disintegrate. A blinding light erupted from within the crystal man, transforming into a blazing mass of rune fire that illuminated the night sky, bathing the entire mountaintop in brilliant light. The pure yang true fire, infused with strands of Tao resonance, blazed forth, its flames capable of burning through all matter as they assailed the youth before them. Each wisp of fire was a rune, and their combined formation was terrifyingly powerful, illuminating the mountaintop as bright as day. Qinming raised his left hand and struck forward, unleashing an endless wave of decay. Even the pure yang runic flames seemed to come alive, faltering and extinguishing under its influence. Drawing upon the night mist world's ultimate extraordinary techniques, the withered flourish scripture, Qinming fully manifested the true meaning of wither. The sight was terrifying, as he dismantled a peerless pure yang technique. Then, his right hand erupted in radiant light, the surging heavenly light force, the antithesis of the withered essence. The power of heavenly light exploded to its peak. This punch of light seemed capable of shattering all obstacles, sending the dim rune fire scattering in all directions before it burst into nothingness. The crystal man crossed his arms, desperately blocking. Yet he was still sent reeling backward by the impact. In the next instant, Qinming's ultimate technique shifted again. Dark light surged from his left hand, while white light blazed from his right. Black and white light erupted simultaneously, striking forward. The crystal man retreated swiftly, and at the center of his brow, a pure yang lotus bloomed, its petals radiating a dazzling spectrum of colors. Within the lotus, a small spear gestated, bobbing and swaying as it swirled with dense, intricate characters, as if containing the very rules and principles of the night mist world. The lotus suddenly bloomed, unleashing a cascade of radiant light that poured toward Qinming. Yet his black-white aura blocked the attack, the two forces colliding violently with thunderous roars. The spear within the lotus shot out like lightning, aiming straight for Qinming's forehead. Qinming's hands moved in a blur, his black-white aura transforming into a muddy mire and then into chains that ensnared the spear, immobilizing it in midair. The black-white light merged and resonated. In an instant, a cracking sound rang out. The spear's tip, as if carrying the profound mysteries of the night mist world, was shattered and gradually torn apart. Xiao Wu's expression turned unprecedentedly serious. The disciples from the hidden sects of the night mist world were truly formidable, forcing even Brother Ming to unleash his most profound techniques. He murmured, no wonder he's the closed-door disciple of a sevenfold convergence perfection realm cultivator. He's truly formidable. On the mountaintop, sand and stones flew, lightning crackled, and thunder rumbled. The two figures clashed and separated, their movements a blur as they exchanged violent blows repeatedly. With a crack, the crystal man's right arm snapped. Qinming, using the dragon serpent scissors, an ultimate technique from the dragon serpent scripture, fused with his black-white light to sever the limb cleanly. Using the wither flourish and yin-yang principles from the black and white scripture and the withered flourish scripture, Qinming struck with both fists and palms, shattering half of the crystal man's body and rendering him powerless. With a clang, the crystal man collapsed to the ground, motionless. A consciousness spiritual light flickered within his eye sockets, emitting mental waves. How do you feel, newcomer? The depths of the night mist world run deep. To fall to the disciple of their most esteemed master is no disgrace. Use this to temper yourself, ignite your fighting spirit, and your path ahead will be boundless. Xiao Wu interjected, are you crazy? Brother Ming won. A mistake. Let's start again. The consciousness spiritual light in the crystal man's eye sockets flickered erratically, and he emitted new mental waves. Without a doubt, these were words left behind long ago. The owner of the thatched hut had subjectively believed that the newcomer would most likely suffer a crushing defeat, hence his initial pronouncements. Fortunately, he wasn't too rigid and could correct himself. Indeed, he swiftly altered his aura and demeanor, exclaiming in surprise before seeming deeply moved. Remarkable newcomer. To actually defeat the disciple of a sevenfold convergence perfection realm cultivator. You rival me in my youth. You possess the talent of a heavenly god. The owner of the thatched hut praised him, seemingly also boasting. Finally, he turned serious and said, even if you rival the heavenly god in his youth, never grow complacent. In the vast night sky, even divine beings can lose their way and face the calamity of falling in blood. With that, the ground beneath him cracked open, and light poured through. The crystal man spoke solemnly, "Shall I give you a fish, or teach you how to fish? Or perhaps both? I shall bestow upon you the very thing you need most." Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 258, Fishing for the Yin-Yang Grand Elixir. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. The night was as black as ink, and the barren land howled under the howling black feather whirlwind, while the fenced area atop the mountain remained calm and peaceful. The crystal man extracted a glowing object from the cracked earth. Qin Ming was startled. "You're really teach a man to fish, literally, aren't you?" Wu Yaozu tilted his head, giving the slumped crystal man a disdainful look. In the crystal man's hand was a fine, semi-transparent thread that shimmered brightly, its end fastened to a gleaming hook. Xiao Wu curled his lip. "Literally. You're not actually going to give Brother Ming 2 fish, are you?" "You're not as foolish as I thought," the crystal man nodded solemnly. Xiao Wu wanted to punch him. "You're the one who's too naive. Who cares about your fish?" The crystal man said seriously, "Do you think anyone can eat fish raised in the demon land?" Wu Yaozu rolled his eyes, not wanting to waste his breath. At this level, who cared about mere culinary desires? "These fish are substance," the crystal man explained. "The ancient immortal paths emphasized the harmony of dragon and tiger to refine the yin-yang grand elixir. Tell me, how precious do you think that is?" Qin Ming remained silent. His own path was the path of awakening, unrelated to the ancient immortal paths. He knew that outsiders truly valued the yin-yang grand elixir. Otherwise, Li Qingyu, Kui Chong, and the others wouldn't have ventured to Black White Mountain to seek it in the first place. In the second realm, your spiritual domain can only achieve a minimal degree of pure yang transformation on its own. The third realm requires either tribulation crossing or nourishment by immortal fire to continuously refine it, dramatically increasing its efficiency. This yin-yang grand elixir from the demon land can constantly temper your consciousness' spiritual light. If you can fully integrate it into your spiritual domain, its potential applications will be boundless. The crystal man's face was incapable of expressing much emotion, but one could sense the solemnity in his voice. Even Xiao Wu, who had been glaring at him, put away his displeasure, realizing he had misunderstood. It was a pair of yin-yang fish, a true renowned medicine substance. Such a transformed fish is exceedingly rare throughout history. Even in famous mountains, great rivers, forbidden lands, and cursed places, they are difficult to find. After a brief explanation, the crystal man disintegrated with a clatter. However, a faint spiritual radiance from the fish line remained, guiding them toward the fish pit. Before leaving, Qin Ming opened his awakening eye and gazed toward the end of this barren land. Faintly, he saw a city enclosed by cracked, earthen walls. It was an earth city, its walls riddled with holes, exuding the power of ages and a sense of profound antiquity. Qin Ming guessed it wasn't the Jade capital. Even so, he sensed an extremely dangerous aura emanating from the city. Anyone who dared approach would likely die instantly. The Jade capital is the subject of many beautiful legends, but the path to it is swept by the black feather whirlwind, haunted by ghost shadows, and filled with unknown horrors. The two turned and descended the mountain, retracing their steps. They left the area of the thatched hut and re-entered the demon land. Under the night sky, a thick fog rolled across the desolate, red earth. Occasional wisps of demonic essence rose from the ground, and the land was deathly silent. The ball of thread in Qin Ming's hand glowed, guiding their way. During their journey, they spotted a phoenix-shaped demonic essence. After a long chase, they watched as it spread its wings and soared into the pitch-black sky, vanishing in an instant. This place was truly teeming with top-tier demonic essence and otherworldly essence. Both Qin Ming and Xiao Wu's mouths watered. They discovered several types in succession. Even if they couldn't use them themselves, they could sell them for exorbitant prices. The fishing line pulsed with mental fluctuations. It's just a minor phoenix. It's still carrying a lot of chicken feathers, more like an old hen. Wu Yaozu scoffed. Your standards are too high. The two rushed 300 li and finally arrived at their destination. The area was a dense expanse of craters, large and small, shrouded in demonic essence. Not a blade of grass or even ordinary rocks could withstand a touch, they crumbled into dust. This was the result of millennia of demonic essence erosion. The ground was littered with metal fragments and meteorites, all fractured and cracked. This was why the immortal great sect had once cultivated demonic essence here. Long ago, a spectacular meteor shower had rained down upon this land, a magnificent spectacle that brought with it vast quantities of otherworldly matter. Today, most people no longer venture here to collect demonic essence. Most had been taken, and the remaining were either flawed or extremely dangerous to handle. Moreover, some wicked demonic essence and life-slaying demonic essence, specifically targeting living beings, could claim lives at any moment. Of course, where the danger was greatest, the risks were highest, and the potential rewards could be greatest. In the beyond the mortal realm, a handful of near-immortal seeds had once come here to gather wondrous demonic essence and legendary great otherworldly essence, using them to temper their pure yang consciousness spiritual light. In fact, some immortal seeds, blessed by heaven, had captured dragon-shaped demonic essence here. By aligning it with their spiritual domain, they had refined their bodies into what could truly be considered a rare and peerless great medicine. Qinming said, "There's otherworldly essence suspended like a divine lamp, a vermilion bird-shaped fire demonic essence, and an earth mother-shaped wondrous demonic essence. These must all be legendary tier." They had already seen many grievances etched onto meteorites along the way, expressing the dissatisfaction of the demonic essence harvesters. The fishing line emitted mental fluctuations and said, "They can't compare to the fish demonic essence I discovered. If the fish demonic essence is so extraordinary, why wasn't it taken?" Xiao Wu asked. The residual mental radiance on the fishing line rippled. Demonic essence, divine grade heavenly essence, and the like are formless and intangible. Once they develop sentience, they become even harder to find and capture. Moreover, divine objects naturally conceal themselves, willingly blending into the mundane. The less attention they draw, the safer they are. As they spoke, they arrived at the core zone, where several massive pits gaped like abysses, said to connect to underground fissures that stretched to the deepest depths of the earth. Many knew that fierce treasures still lingered here. Someone had once discovered an Earth Mother demonic essence, and a golden-winged great pung-shaped otherworldly essence had once soared into the sky, illuminating the heavens, yet neither had been captured, much to everyone's regret. All this demonic essence and otherworldly essence were condensed from rare otherworldly heavenly light and had already developed sentience, ultimately taking on physical forms. Even a small portion of these could be recorded in the most prestigious records of top-tier demonic essence. Even Senior Brother Pei of the Pure Land, an immortal seed capable of debating with senior figures, failed here. The golden-winged great pung is truly mysterious and terrifying. It shattered the clouds with a single flap of its wings and soared into the sky. If one could capture it, it would hang in the air like a great sun, and how terrifying would it be to temper one's spirit and consciousness until they merged into one. Undoubtedly, the meteorites in this region were covered in inscriptions, all bearing the impressions, insights, and regrets of those who had sought demonic essence. The Earth Mother demonic essence is suspected to have been subdued. It hasn't appeared in a long time. The records spanned vast stretches of time, from ancient eras to recent years. Qinming focused on messages from the past year or two, as older ones had lost their relevance. Senior Brother Zhou, who opened his divine eye in his brow, discovered a big black fish here. Despite exhausting all his methods, he ultimately failed to retrieve it. Behind this inscription, numerous comments followed. Qichong and his senior brother pored over ancient texts and found clues, suspecting that the immortal great sects of the past kept two fish here that could be combined into a yin-yang grand elixir. As expected, this revelation sparked intense debate, drawing many to fish here. The youth of later generations are truly formidable. To have made such a discovery, the fishing line glowed, its mental fluctuations filled with awe. The meteorite mentioned that Qichong, wielding a treasured artifact refined by Sun Taichu, had once attempted to catch the big black fish with a net imbued with Tao resonance. He came agonizingly close. At the last moment, his efforts were thwarted. The big black fish flicked its tail, striking Qichong in the face, and then vanished into the abyss. After this, Qichong returned many times, but each attempt ended in failure. The meteorite also mentioned that Zhang Ran, the foremost genius of her generation in the immortal land, had visited after obtaining the greatest fortune from Black White Mountain. She, too, had tried to capture the big black fish using her sect's treasured artifact, but failed. Members of the secret sect had also made attempts, such as Cheng Sheng, a master of the Third Realm's perfection, who ultimately left empty-handed. Even elder figures had come to investigate, but the formless demonic essence proved elusive, and their efforts yielded nothing. The fishing line glowed, urging Qinming to succeed this time and finally reel in the fish. No one had ever discovered a white fish here. If such a discovery were confirmed, it would mean the area truly possessed a yin-yang balance. If a powerful figure were to stake a claim here permanently, the yin-yang grand elixir would likely be lost forever. If even the most formidable figures have failed, can this fishing line really work? Xiao Wu asked doubtfully. This is a rare treasure left by the immortal great sect that used to cultivate demonic essence, specifically for catching the yin-yang fish. What do you think? The hut master had painstakingly retrieved it from the ruins of the demon land. Impressive. Xiao Wu immediately praised. Unfortunately, as time passes, this line will snap after only a few more uses. Without the proper techniques to nurture it, it will eventually return to dust. The hut master's residual mental radiance was dimming, on the verge of disappearing completely. How do I nurture it? Qinming asked. It was forged with heavenly light and shares the same origin as demonic essence and otherworldly essence. It requires a very special blend of human heavenly light and one's spiritual domain to sustain it and resist decay. Don't even try. You can't do it. Suddenly, the Hut Master's lingering consciousness cut off abruptly. He was stunned to see Qin Ming's fingertips glowing, a crystalline heavenly light intermingling with consciousness, divine wisdom, and other elements, pouring into the fishing line. The line became increasingly translucent and radiant, and the runes began to flow. The Hut Master exclaimed in shock, "You've extended its life. That's the legendary heavenly light force technique, and you're simultaneously advancing multiple aspects. How can you balance it all?" Clearly, he should have noticed this long ago. Due to the limited and mechanical nature of the spiritual light left behind by the Hut Master, he had initially mistaken the blazing sun heavenly light force for pure yang consciousness spiritual light. Quite remarkable, truly outstanding. The last vestiges of spiritual light left by the Hut Master in the fishing line gradually faded. A single fish comes and goes without form, but two can balance each other. These were his final words. Qin Ming bowed to the void, bidding farewell to the Hut Master. Yet he sensed that the man's true body had not perished. The blood-stained kite had fallen far in the distance. Xiaowu said, "This yin-yang grand elixir is exceptionally extraordinary. I feel it's perfectly suited for your current condition, Brother Ming." Qin Ming nodded. He had been cultivating the withered flourish scripture and the black and white scripture precisely to delve into the realm of yin-yang and black-white opposition. If he could now catch a yin-yang fish, it would be a perfect fit. Even the most elite immortal seeds like Zhang Ran, senior brother Zhou, and Kui Chong would be tempted by a single black fish. This demonstrated the extraordinary value of a complete grand elixir. Using his own heavenly light, which was slightly beyond the four imperial force, and blending it with his divine wisdom, Qin Ming infused the fishing line and cast it into the largest, deepest pit. Simultaneously, he retrieved the tattered cloth, cleared out its contents, and prepared to use it to contain the yin-yang grand elixir, preventing it from dissipating or escaping after being caught. For 2 full hours, Qin Ming sat motionless, the fishing line showing no sign of activity. Only when he poured all his heavenly light force into the line, causing it to emit mysterious fluctuations and ripple with divine patterns, did the pitch-black abyss finally stir. Through the blurred vision of his awakening eye, Qin Ming caught a fleeting glimpse of a dark shadow darting past. So, to capture the legendary demonic essence, one must use the right methods. Another half-hour passed before Qin Ming suddenly yanked the line. A big black fish, longer than an adult man, leapt from the abyss, hooked. Xiaowu gasped, feeling the utmost yin aura freeze him to the bone. This yin fish was truly terrifying. Could it really merge with the human heavenly light? In truth, even among the ancient immortal Dao lineages, few core disciples could successfully merge such yin-yang fish into their spiritual domain. In the second realm, it was practically impossible. In the distance, gasps of astonishment arose. Zhang Ran, Cheng Sheng, Kui Chong, and the others had all failed. Yet now, someone had actually succeeded in fishing. Some eyes burned with fierce desire. Qin Ming reacted instantly, storing the big black fish in his tattered cloth space. In the abyss, the removal of the yin fish seemed to have shattered some delicate balance. Yang energy surged, and white light blazed forth, leaving the massive fish pit in turmoil. Qin Ming focused intently, now fishing for the yang fish. With the yin fish gone, the yang fish had appeared in this imbalanced place. Good heavens! Did I just reel in a dragon? Or is it a sun? It's so blinding! Xiaowu exclaimed, his eyes welling up with tears. This, otherworldly essence, was utterly astonishing. Even Qin Ming's awakening eye struggled to endure the glare, his vision distorted and uncomfortable. As the yang fish emerged, he flung it out of the abyss. Anyone nearby who witnessed this scene was stunned. The yang fish had never been seen before, remaining merely a subject of speculation among a few. Now, not only had its existence been proven, but it had actually been caught. This was a priceless elixir. Some were overwhelmed with emotion, their hearts pounding with awe. Qin Ming swiftly moved to store the yang fish in his tattered cloth space as well. In an instant, the two fish linked head to tail, transforming into a black-white yin-yang diagram. These were legendary demonic essence and otherworldly heavenly light, rare treasures from the heavenly light. When combined, they were considered a great elixir by those in the beyond the mortal realm and secret sects. Their reputation was well deserved. Qin Ming's heart overflowed with joy and a sense of immense accomplishment. This yin-yang grand elixir would be crucial for his cultivation, its impact immeasurable and significant. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 259, all preparations complete. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Brother Ming, I don't think we can escape easily, Xiaowu murmured. High above the night sky, the cry of a bird pierced the silence. The dense fog churned, and shadowy figures flickered near the fish pit. Both the pitch-black sky and the demonic essence-shrouded ground were being approached by people. A small group of elite disciples from prestigious sects, including Kui Chong, Zhang Ran, and Cheng Sheng, had come here in the past to fish for yin-yang fish. Moreover, the area was known to harbor fierce treasures. In the past, an otherworldly essence in the form of a golden-winged great pung had soared into the sky, illuminating the heavens, and legendary creatures like the purple void demonic essence had been discovered here. Consequently, people occasionally ventured into the core zone of the demon land to try their luck. But there should never be this many people here on an ordinary day. Qinming and Xiaowu both sensed over a dozen individuals lurking nearby, their gazes burning like red-hot irons, scorching hot and intense. Without a doubt, they had been tailed since leaving Kunling City. Whatever their original intentions might have been, they were now completely captivated by the yin-yang fish, their eyes gleaming with greed, unable to look away. Though the legendary yin-yang otherworldly essence was extremely dangerous, it was also considered a rare and precious medicinal ingredient. It was something many had dreamed of acquiring. Among them are spies from various families and desperate outlaws willing to risk their lives, Qinming said. Someone couldn't hold back. Their eyes burned with a fierce, venomous heat as they emerged from the dense fog. The first to appear was a black-robed man, his entire body, including his head and face, completely concealed. He appeared to be elderly, his voice raspy and aged. Child, you've suffered out here. Come home with your uncle. No matter what, the Kui family raised you. We are your closest kin. You old bastard, who do you think you're trying to take advantage of? Xiaowu immediately retorted. It was clear the black-robed man coveted the yin-yang grand elixir. His feigned concern and self-proclaimed uncle status were shameless and greedy, an insult to their intelligence. He turned his icy gaze on Xiaowu. Silence, this is the Kui family's affair. Stay out of it, outsider. Get lost. Qinming's 4 words were simple and direct. How dare you speak to your uncle like that? The black-robed man's eyes turned sinister as he advanced from the fog. Another figure in gray robes appeared. Qinming, we understand your resentment is Chonghei's substitute. Come back, and everything can be resolved. In the distant fog, a middle-aged man from the Kui family's face darkened. What kind of monsters and gods are these? He thought. Running around impersonating Kui family members. How deep must their hatred run to spread such lies? He desperately wanted to leap out and curse their shamelessness, but doing so would expose his own identity. The man's gaze turned cold. Even if the Kui family wanted to kill that young man, they wouldn't openly reveal themselves at such a critical moment. At that moment, a ghost-like figure lunged at Qinming without a word. Someone had made the first move, clearly aiming for the yin-yang fish. The earlier black-robed man and gray-clad man, who had been closing in, no longer concealed their intentions. They surged forward like thunder. It was as if a signal had been given. A dozen figures emerged from the fog, like sharks smelling blood, all charging forward. Shameless bastards. They all want to steal the black-white fish. Xiaowu's face paled. Without the special fishing line gifted by the hut master, Qinming would never have been able to catch the yin-yang grand elixir. Now, these people were green with envy. Qinming activated the silk book manual, using adhesive force to pull the black-white diagram from the torn cloth space and drape it over his body. At the same time, he bound the yin-yang fish with the fishing line, just in case. Qinming immediately borrowed its power, even wanting to refine it on the spot. The black-robed man was the first to charge, only to receive a face-slapping blow. Slap. The black fish's tail struck his face. In truth, the black fish had been trying to escape, and its thrashing had inadvertently whipped its tail against the man's face. Startled, Qinming poured all his strength into activating the heavenly light force. Instantly, the black-white fish's radiance intensified, and they began to spin at breakneck speed. The others arrived, their eyes burning with greed, and all attacked, desperate to seize the yin-yang grand elixir. At that moment, the black-white diagram transformed, as if it were burning. Ah! The black-robed man's outstretched right arm was struck by the yin-yang fish and instantly severed, falling to the ground. As Qinming poured more heavenly light force into it, the black-white diagram merged with it, emitting a terrifying aura. It was no longer just 2 fish, but a natural manifestation of the heavenly light Dao diagram. Using this, he charged into the crowd, and in an instant, multiple figures were swept by the black-white light. Ah! Several screams of agony rang out. Severed hands burned on the ground, while others were bisected at the waist. Some were in the form of consciousness spiritual light, and now half their bodies were engulfed in the black-white flames. Those who had followed were mostly in the third realm. The moment they came into contact with the light, they faced such dire peril. All of them were struck with terror. The otherworldly essence from beyond the heavens, once unleashed, proved terrifyingly powerful. Qinming felt something was amiss. He couldn't control it any longer, the black-white diagram was straining against his restraint, even the fish line couldn't hold it back. He quickly stored it away in the torn cloth space. Flying creatures approached in the night sky, and over a dozen figures on the ground no longer hesitated, charging forward. Little friend Qin, you're quite impressive. Come join us as a guard in our beyond the mortal realm Pure Land. Someone called out with a laugh. Qinming suspected this was a setup, the Pure Land wouldn't resort to such crude tactics. Qinming, come to our secret sect and become a mountain gate guardian. Another voice chimed in. Xiaowu scoffed, these bastards are all impersonating others, and others are impersonating them. Not a single one is being framed, they're probably the real forces behind this. Suddenly, the wind howled like thunder. Through the swirling mist, a gaunt figure emerged, trailing a tempest of wind and storm. Over 100 strands of hair danced around its head. Enough. Since you've all come to fight, I'll send you all to your deaths. Yu Zhensheng moved with ghost-like speed, arriving in an instant. With a wave of his sleeve, a thunderous boom erupted, and the frontmost attackers were instantly torn to shreds, their severed limbs and mangled remains littering the ground. If he hadn't wanted to keep a few alive, they would have exploded into dust. Meanwhile, in the night sky, Zhao Ziwan stood atop a high-grade exotic bird, slashing through the darkness with brutal strikes. Several exotic birds exploded, their masters screaming as they plummeted to the ground amidst a shower of bloodied feathers. Senior, I didn't attack. Someone shouted. You followed us with malicious intent. Dare you claim you had no ulterior motives? Yu Zhensheng roared. With a wave of his sleeve, he delivered a finishing blow. The man's body burst open, but he was left alive. After his identity was exposed, this was Qinming's first time leaving Kunling City to search for demonic essence to break through his cultivation. Naturally, he had to report this to the authorities. Yu Zhensheng and Zhao Ziwan personally followed him, staying outside the thatched hut but remaining nearby throughout the rest of their journey. Otherwise, Qinming wouldn't have calmly continued fishing if he'd sensed their presence nearby. Speak. Identify yourselves. Zhao Ziwan descended from the night sky. Xiaowu hoisted the severely injured black-robed man into the air. You old bastard. Who do you think you are, acting like an uncle to us? Listen here, you wretched grandson, I'm your grandfather. He slapped the man repeatedly across the face until his teeth flew out, finally feeling a sense of satisfaction. As Qinming had predicted, these were desperate fanatics willing to die, true death warriors. After all, some of their consciousness spiritual light had already dissipated on the spot. The survivors were merely hired pawns, sent to gather information. The mastermind behind it all had already severed every connection, leaving no trace. At that moment, Zhao Ziwan and Yu Zhensheng struck ruthlessly. With a sweep of their sleeves, they distorted the very fabric of space, instantly obliterating all the intruders without leaving a single survivor. You actually caught a yin-yang fish in the demon land. This must be the finest demonic essence and otherworldly anomalous substance left behind by the immortal great sect from that era. We absolutely cannot let this information leak. For this reason, the two seniors made the ruthless decision to eliminate all witnesses. Qinming mused that without the yin-yang fish, these people might not have dared to attack him. After all, these were sensitive times. The founding ancestors of the Path of Awakening had just obliterated Cao Qianqiu. He didn't feel he was asking too much of the two seniors for their assistance. Given the circumstances, extreme caution was necessary, and special measures were warranted. Qinming wasn't overly worried about his situation. He had already obtained the Yin-Yang Grand Elixir, and his foundation was nearly complete. Once he refined it and reached the mid-stage of the second realm, he wouldn't fear such opponents anymore. Xiao Wu, do you want to try demonic refinement with the rainbow light in your body, integrating it with the otherworldly essence? I have some starfire essence here, Qinming asked. He had a better option, the yin-yang balance. While the starfire essence was rare, it couldn't compare to the former. Xiao Wu shook his head. Forget it. I can't withstand that kind of fiery essence. Besides, all the heavenly light substances are effective for Brother Ming. You should keep them for yourself. In recent days, Kunling has been hosting frequent lectures by founding ancestors. According to rumors, some immortal seeds and divine seeds have benefited greatly, with some individuals seemingly on the verge of reaching the next level. Comparison breeds anxiety. Even those on the path of awakening felt a sense of unease, their own paths appearing too arduous and their progress too slow. After returning from the demon land, Qinming did not attend Sun Taichu's sermon. Instead, he continued to study the yin-yang grand elixir while waiting for the thunder and rain to arrive. The black-white fish's origin was a rare type of heavenly light. Now that it had taken human form, Qinming theoretically could fully integrate it. However, one concern remained: the greater the power of the demonic essence or otherworldly essence, the greater the harm it could inflict on oneself, even shortening one's lifespan. Therefore, Qinming proceeded with extreme caution, constantly testing the fusion process. Light, misty rain began to fall from the night sky. Li Qingyu arrived at the Shan Mountain and River Academy with 2 pieces of news. After days of deliberation, the founding ancestors had begun preparations for the Great Pioneering Era. The official start would be within months, at most within 2 years. This development would have far-reaching consequences. The founding ancestors of all paths recently wore grave expressions, as this undertaking was, in a sense, a gamble with the very fate of their clans. After all, each great pioneering era was a gamble with the clan's destiny. No one knew what kind of opponents they would encounter once the pioneering war began. The night mist world was vast and boundless, each region mysterious, filled with the unknown and danger. The previous few great pioneering eras had all been dangerous but ultimately rewarding, leaving the participants with abundant spoils. The various paths were now teeming with talented individuals, growing ever more prosperous. Qin Ming, however, harbored some anxiety. 500 years ago, a sevenfold convergence perfection realm cultivator had emerged from the depths of the night mist. Fortunately, it was human. But what if non-human species resided there? Their leaders could rival divine beings, having established vast, mysterious kingdoms. A chance encounter would be disastrous. Zhang Ran has arrived, Li Qingyu announced with a smile. The foremost peer of the beyond the mortal realm immortal land had come to Kunling City. Moreover, Li Qingyu had already met her and successfully exchanged the 8 scenery manual. Qin Ming was overjoyed. Qingyu, no need for thanks between us. The 8 scenery manual covered internal refinement and the domains of thunder fire, both crucial to the path he intended to follow. With everything prepared, Qin Ming felt ready to use thunder fire to refine the yin-yang grand elixir. Nothing now stood in the way of his breakthrough to the third realm. Many behind his back whispered that even with his peerless talent, he would be far from young when he reached the third realm. Qin Ming refused to be deterred. According to his current plans, he intends to rewrite some established patterns. Over the next 2 days, Qin Ming immersed himself in the 8 scenery manual, studying the yin-yang fish and adjusting himself to peak condition. Finally, he looked up at the sky, awaiting the arrival of the thunderstorm. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 260, Intensive Cultivation and Breaking Through. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Asterisk 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 asterisk. A melodious bell shattered the tranquility of the night sky as a lightning bird raced across the darkness. The creature, about a foot long, its feathers shimmering brilliantly, was an unmistakable sight against the black canvas of the night. True to its name, it resembled a golden streak of lightning, cutting through the swirling mist. One of the fastest birds in existence, it was perfectly suited for delivering urgent messages. It had long since broken the sound barrier. A pure white jade bell was tied to its leg, radiating gentle ripples of energy. The bell's resonance projected directly into the hearts of all living beings along its path. Clearly, this was a rare treasure, capable of harmonizing with the spiritual domain. 10,000 fires, urgent. Jade bell message. Many people were startled, looking up at the night sky. In the night mist world, certain things were not to be trifled with. Take, for example, this lightning bird carrying a jade bell. Legend had it that these precious bells were personally crafted by the founding ancestors. Such messages were only sent under extraordinary circumstances. Who would dare to intercept it? Anyone who dared commit such an act of treason would inevitably face severe retribution later. A streak of golden radiance smoothly entered Kunling City. All the divine crossbows on the towering spires remained silent. That night, Qin Ming received news that a training session would be held the next day. To be precise, he was only a study companion, or, more accurately, a training companion. They want me to undergo training alongside the immortal seeds from beyond the mortal realm. Qin Ming was displeased. The key issue was that he was merely a tag-along, not someone who would receive special treatment. In short, he, Shang Yiwu, and several divine seeds from the secret sect were all just sparring partners, not among the main trainees. Yu Zhensheng smiled and said, "Don't worry, the immortal path will provide a portion of auspicious beast blood as compensation." That's negotiable. Qin Ming's tone softened, appearing quite reasonable and accommodating, his bottom line clearly loosening. In truth, one portion of auspicious beast blood would suffice for his needs. But such precious medicine was a rare and valuable commodity, far more useful than day gold. Who would refuse more? Besides, he needed to give some away. Do you have any other requests? Yu Zhensheng asked. The main thing was that the founding ancestors of the Path of Awakening had agreed to this. Undoubtedly, the Immortal Path ancestors and other high-ranking figures from various paths had been consulted. This made Qin Ming suspicious and curious. What exactly had happened to necessitate a training session for the Immortal Path's seeds? I want to see the Immortal Combat Manual. If that's not possible, just send me the entire 8 Scenery Divine Illumination Manual. And, if you can, throw in some legendary otherworldly anomalous substance. That would be ideal, Qin Ming said, making a bold demand. Yu Zhensheng sighed. This kid's demands are so straightforward and unpretentious, just a few simple requests, nothing fancy, but each one hits the mark like a blade. I doubt they'll agree. For instance, the Immortal Combat Manual has been disguised, and its core principles have been merged with the Immortal Path's teachings. As expected, after Yu Zhensheng relayed the request, the other side grew annoyed. They insisted this was merely a simple sparring session and that a portion of auspicious beast blood would suffice to demonstrate their sincerity. However, after prolonged deliberation, they reconsidered, acknowledging Qin Ming's exceptional performance in the second realm. Reluctantly, they agreed to one additional concession. Yu Zhensheng explained, they're letting you choose. Either you wait until you reach the third realm to study the 8 Scenery Divine Illumination Manual, or after this matter is resolved, they'll reveal the location of a mysterious demon land to satisfy your request. Zhao Ziwan frowned. The former is a secret manual, currently the only copy, that has fallen into the hands of the immortal land. It will be nearly impossible to decipher without reaching the spiritual domain realm. This was clearly a gamble, assuming Qin Ming's youth had prevented him from reaching the third realm. By withholding the scripture for later, they were leaving its fate to chance. Moreover, Beyond the Mortal Realm provided demon lands but offered no guarantee of obtaining the legendary otherworldly anomalous substance. It was evident that the Immortal Path cultivators had agreed reluctantly. No need to rush into a decision, Qin Ming said. He had agreed to participate in the training, but refused to accompany them during the thunderstorms, claiming he needed to research secret manuals related to thunder fire. He didn't want to waste time and was eager to refine the yin-yang fish as quickly as possible. Is he looking down on me? Why didn't he invite me? Wu Yaozu grumbled, also eager to earn some hard currency. Zhao Ziwan nodded. You're right. I'll ask for you. There's no harm in profiting from auspicious beast blood. Qin Ming experienced several thunderstorms, but unfortunately, they were all brief, mere warm-ups. During this time, he had already practiced the 8 Scenery scripture to about 70% completion. The days that followed were destined to be packed, his schedule filled. The next day, Qin Ming was summoned to the Flying Immortal Academy. The urgency was palpable, they wanted him to spar so quickly. Xiaowu accompanied him, as he had already been approved. After all, his record-hunting demons on the plateau had been nothing short of remarkable. What's going on? Many wondered. Why is the Immortal Path so eager to hold a training camp for all the near-immortal seeds? The reason remained a mystery. Last night's frantic Jade Bell communication had sent shockwaves through all factions. Martial Arena No. 1 at the Flying Immortal Academy was completely sealed off, with all other disciples forbidden from approaching. The 4 seed disciples from the secret sect wore masks and had temporarily altered their physical forms, making it impossible to identify them. They were serving as sparring partners. After all, the sparring would be against immortal seeds, and the outcome would affect the Academy's reputation. The 4 didn't want to reveal their true identities. Here, 6 near-immortal seeds were present, all at the second realm. Qin Ming had already guessed that Zhang Ran, Kui Chong, and the others wouldn't choose sparring partners below their own realm for practice. If we consider the ancestral courts of the Pure Land, Immortal Land, Yang Land, and Calamity Land, along with the second realm near-immortal seeds, the foundation of the Beyond the Mortal Realm is terrifyingly deep. Brother, over here. Shang Yiwu grinned and waved at Qin Ming. Given his burly physique, his head alone was nearly twice the size of others, no mask could hide it. Since they were the only 2 on the path of awakening, Qin Ming naturally had to reveal his true form. All allies here, Qin Ming, Xiao Wu, and the abandoned disciple of the Tathagata gathered to chat. Shang Yiwu said, I just learned something. It's said to be related to the communication from the depths of the Night Mist world. In recent years, all the major paths have been actively sending personnel to explore the depths of the world beneath the long night. Recently, the Immortal Path seems to have received a significant response. This time, all immortal seeds will undergo intensive training. Higher-level cultivators like Su Xian and Shui Yunjiang will naturally need to be honed by those of even higher stature. Even Zhang Ran, the foremost genius of the Immortal Land, must participate in the training without exception. This shows how seriously Beyond the Mortal Realm takes this matter. The martial arena was vast, its floor paved with copper bricks etched with intricate patterns. It was designed for any kind of training, so they didn't have to worry about damaging the floor. The 6 immortal seeds all wore masks, their names simple and unpretentious, first armor, second armor, and so on. They would have felt deeply humiliated if they lost to their sparring partners. In truth, defeat was normal. After all, their training partners were formidable, divine seeds from the secret sect, disciples of the Tathagata sect, and Qin Ming himself, none of them easy opponents. Qin Ming suspected that 6th armor was Li Qingshu. He hadn't used his awakening eye, but his instincts told him. Li Qingshu watched his opponents, his expression somber. He wanted to complain, did they handpick my nemesis to train with? He had already been slapped hard by Shang Yiwu, swept away by Wu Yaozu's divine rainbow, pummeled by Qin Ming, and nearly split in two by the five-colored sword. Especially with Qin Ming, their enmity ran deep. Sixth armor, you go first, First armor said. As a result, Li Qingshu was beaten 3 times in a row by 3 of his nemesis. He walked silently to the side, saying nothing. For a moment, the arena fell quiet. Who is the actual sparring partner here? If they removed their masks, someone's face would surely turn red with shame. Fifth armor, your turn, First armor said again. As the fight began, Qin Ming realized fifth armor was Sun Jingxiao of the Pure Land. He showed no mercy, using Sun Jingxiao as practice to hone his own extraordinary techniques. Qin Ming activated the golden cicada scripture. Instantly, cicada chirps like fine silk filled the air, faint yet continuous, their zen intent unwavering. Outside his body, fine rain fell like silk, and the cicada wings sliced through the air like swords. The golden cicada force struck relentlessly, leaving Sun Jingxiao disheveled and blood-stained. Sun Jingxiao had once scoffed, saying that illusory defeat was not true defeat. He dismissed Qin Ming on his path of awakening as a mere passing spectacle on Li Qingshu's immortal path, a traveler unworthy of his attention. But now, spitting blood and utterly humiliated by the golden cicada force, he found it difficult to maintain his composure. His eyes turned sinister as he unleashed his ultimate technique. A radiant wheel of light materialized around him, poised to be unleashed. Yet Qin Ming's golden cicada force shifted again. The cicada's cry thundered like thunder, and the heavenly light force coalesced into a tangible golden cicada. The creature blazed with radiant light, illuminating all directions. With a thunderous roar, the golden cicada tore through the light wheel and sent Sun Jingxiao flying through the air. The immortal seed was instantly defeated. His mask shattered on the ground, his hair disheveled, and one side of his body drenched in blood. After a moment of dark expression, he finally regained his composure. Qin Ming felt exhilarated. Using an immortal seed to temper his extraordinary techniques proved incredibly satisfying. Next, he fought Jia San, who proved far more formidable. Qin Ming sensed this opponent might be at the late stage of the second realm. Their fierce battle continued for a long time before they separated, both holding back their full strength. Qin Ming felt there was no need to push himself to the limit, after all, they were just sparring partners. Shang Yiwu grinned. What exactly kind of trouble have you encountered on your immortal path? You could ask us to act as external support and cover your back. The founding ancestor has his own plans. The other man replied, unwilling to elaborate. First armor and second armor didn't spar with Qin Ming. Instead, they had him unleash his heavenly light force to scorch their projected consciousness spiritual light, putting them through a brutal training regimen. In that instant, their burning consciousness spiritual light twisted, and their spiritual domain shook violently. As they retreated, their eyes held a peculiar expression. The man and woman were both startled. The two most powerful immortal seeds sensed the danger of Qin Ming's heavenly light and suspected he was holding back. It's raining. I must excuse myself. Qin Ming heard thunder in the distance and immediately withdrew, as they had agreed beforehand. He couldn't let this delay his cultivation. For someone in the early second realm, such combat prowess is truly remarkable. It's a pity that breaking through solely on his own will make his progress excruciatingly slow. An elder was observing from the shadows. Are you still considering finding external support? Someone asked. Forget it. Someone in the early second realm isn't useful enough. Besides, we can't afford to lose face by asking a young disciple from the path of awakening to join the fray. Not unless it's an absolute last resort. This time, the thunderstorm was exceptionally fierce. In the night sky, lightning struck one after another. In the high tower of the Shan Mountain and River Academy, Qin Ming sat in meditation, enveloped by the otherworldly heavenly light, his entire being blazing with radiance. At this moment, he had cultivated the 8 scenery scripture to its great perfection and was now putting it to formal use. The high-grade secret manual divine illumination scripture could ultimately ignite a single lamp, channeling thunderfire to heaven, illuminating both body and consciousness, and tempering and baptizing oneself. If endured, it surpassed conventional marrow cleansing. The extraordinary grade 8 scenery scripture possessed its own unique marvels and boundless mysteries. Qin Ming grasped its true essence, shaping the heavenly light into an 8 trigrams furnace in his chest and abdomen. Using thunder fire and worldly flames for internal refinement, the furnace immediately radiated 10,000 rays of multicolored light. Soon after, he unified the 8 scenery force into a single, cohesive force. Finally, Qin Ming used the Silk Book Scripture's teachings to govern all techniques, reconstructing the resplendent 8 trigrams furnace and using it to refine a dazzling golden core. Then, the golden core's color changed. In an instant, it transformed into a black-white pill. Even the furnace body split into yin and yang hues. For Qin Ming was now striking out, daring to refine the black-white twin fish. They formed a black-white Tao diagram, their heads and tails intertwined, a profound and mystical sight. This was a furnace of yin-yang grand elixir, crucial for the transformation of Qin Ming's heavenly light and his breakthrough in realm. In the night sky, thick dark clouds gathered, rain poured in torrents, and thunder cascaded like a waterfall. Densely packed lightning seemed to flood the sky, threatening to engulf the tower. Yet within the tower, Qinming was also bathed in the otherworldly heavenly light. The yin-yang diagram spun, and a furnace of heavenly light great elixir emitted a clear, fragrant aroma. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel.